push the record button. My plan here is to go through the questions that were attached to last week's lecture and give you the answers to them, and then I'll post the answers as well. So we'll do that quickly, and then I have a lecture that ties into the LT, or the location and transportation. Actually, two lectures that tie into the LT, or location and transportation credit category. So hopefully we will be able to get all that done tonight. And I'm going to artfully sidestep any political conversations here. So because that's a swamp we can get, we get stuck in that quicksand. So. Okay, I have up on the screen the questions. In my textbook it's chapter 4, but I think I have them titled as third-party verification on the whoops, wrong. On Blackboard. So, which of the following is an unacceptable way to refer to a project seeking LEED certification? To a registered project seeking LEED certification. Obviously, the answer would be E, right? You don't register with the goal in mind. You register the project, and then you may be targeting LEED Platinum, but you don't register that way. You just register the project. Question 4.2. Sorry, there's another little typo here. Would be D, U.S. Green Building Council is the correct way to refer to that entity. Again, if you guys have any questions, please put it in the chat or shout it out. I'm going to kind of go through these here. Again, I think from your standpoint, the best, oops, here we go. The best way is probably to go back again and look at questions and answers. Who is responsible for the appeals process? The GBCI is responsible for the appeals process. Remember, there we have the US GBC that sets up the rating systems, and then the GBCI, or the Green Building Certification Institute, is responsible for running the process of both accrediting professionals as well as running the process of certifying buildings. Question 4.4 has to do with CIRs, or credit interpretation rulings. Remember, a CIR is something that a team would submit if they had a question about a credit, something that was unclear based on the reference material. Again, CIRs are project specific. So choose 2, and make sure I got it. Sorry, it's not EFG. It should be ABC. The correct answers would be A. Provide or the first one would be a written interpretation. So the first and the third answers. So provides a written interpretation, and it clarifies one specific credit or prerequisite. 4.5, certification bodies. Remember, certification bodies are set up by the GBCI to help run the process of certifying buildings. So 4.5, the answer would be, and sorry, my B and C ran together here, would be B and C. So certification bodies are accredited. ISO is a standards making body. So And then certification bodies are assigned to a project once the project is registered. The ones that are incorrect, right, certification bodies are not managed by the USGBC, they're managed by the GBCI. The GBCI responds to appeals, not the certification bodies. And certainly certification bodies aren't the ones who help you prepare for their accreditation exam. It's people like me, educators, who are helping you prepare for that. So those are the ones for third-party verification. Again, understanding the various players involved in the process. So let's get rid of that one. And go to the next one here. Okay. This has to do with the various rating systems. Right, we went through BD&C and O&M. BD&C is building, design, and construction. O&M, operations and maintenance. ID&C, interior design and construction. ND for neighborhood development. Again, we talked about the applicability of those different systems to different types of projects. We also talked about prerequisites and credits. A project's LEED certification can expire. The answer is A, true, but only in the case of O&M. Remember that O&M, operations and maintenance, represents a snapshot in time. So an O&M certification expires, is valid for 5 years and expires thereafter. The other rating systems, BD&C, ID&C, are basically certifying the design and construction, so those do not expire. Which type of project is best suited for the LEED for commercial interiors? Right, remember LEED would be a tenant improvement within an existing building. Right, so commercial interiors or interior design and construction goes hand in hand with the core and shell rating system. So core and shell would be the developer who's putting up the building, and ID&C would be the party that is fitting out or building out that particular space. So those two things go together. Uh, 5.3. A developer, right? Developer is kind of the key word here. A developer in Phoenix is seeking LEED Gold for a new lab facility to be built in the spring. They plan on occupying 32% of the facility. In this case, it would be best for the core and shell rating system. So again, core and shell is designed for a developer that is occupying less than 40% of the leasable square footage of the building. Again, the developer is typically going to be building a building that other people are going to fit out and detail. Uh, 5.4, which categories are specific to the LEED for ND or neighborhood development, and they're not available in other rating systems? In this case, it would be, well, again, just look at the ones that you see in the other rating, the other credit categories, right? In ND, we have smart location and linkage and green infrastructure and buildings. Those categories are specific to ND and don't exist in the other rating systems. Which rating system addresses the appropriate sizing of a project? In this case, the answer would be LEED for homes. Recall we mentioned that LEED for homes has points tied to the appropriate sizing, the number of bedrooms and the size of the home. The other rating systems do not. In my opinion, they probably should. Certainly, building less, building smaller is the perfect, one of the most important green attributes of a building is making it right-sized. 5.6 prerequisites are optional. True or false? The answer obviously is false. Prerequisites are mandatory. Prerequisites are the things that you have to do. A law firm occupying a 50-year-old building is replacing the mechanical system to improve energy performance. I think in this case, I would say an existing building where we're doing mechanical system work would be LEED EV O&M. Seems like the best fit if they're only touching the mechanical system. Uh, 5.8 credit weighting. Sorry, these are a little a little hard to read here. I should. I promise I will proofread this stuff before I put it up. I have somebody who's scanning the book and then turning scans into Word documents here, so things get mixed up a little bit sometimes. Which of the following statements are true in regards to credit weightings? Right. Remember the credits have different point values assigned to them, and the weighting of those point values is meant to try to reflect the overall goals of the LEED system. Remember, we had the 7 impact categories. So let's look to that and see what's true. We have the 3 so B would be correct, the 3 association factors. C is correct, everything is on a 100-point scale. And D, 7 impact categories were fine. But this is one that probably bears some additional, as I answer these questions, I can see the ones that I'll probably have to hit on again. We go back and review this toward the end of the semester. 5.9. If a university wishes to build a new administration building on their campus, they could look to LEED for new construction, and C, or LEED for schools. And determine which is more applicable. Ultimately, the answer they're looking for is C. The project team will determine the rating system that's best suited for the project. Right? Both of these might fit. In my case, if it's an administration building, it might be better suited to B, D, and C rather than schools. Because an administration building on a college is sorry, I got a fly in my room here. Quite likely similar to another office building. Number 10. Which reference guide would you look for information? By the way, the reference guides are the kind of the authoritative source of material. If you go to the usgbc.org website, you'll find that there is some material that you can download for free. I have downloaded some material and I posted it on Blackboard. So I posted a Excel file that has a summary of the scoring, and I posted a PDF that kind of summarizes the rating system. But the reference guides are actually the authoritative source for information. And in the case of the reference guides, those are things that you have to purchase. So if you were working on a project team going after seeking LEED certification for a project, someone on your team would buy the reference guide, or probably a number of people on your team would buy the reference guide. Or if you worked for a firm that did this kind of work, your firm would buy the reference guides and have them sitting on the bookshelf for you to refer to. New ground-up construction project, I would say, would be the LEED reference guide for building design and construction. And, oh, we got a lot of them here. Sorry about that. Which of the following answers that best answers the question, what should a LEED project enhance? A LEED project should enhance, they're saying community and human health. Again, we have those impact categories, the 7 impact categories, right? So we want to make the community better and we want to make human health better. Incorporating green building, number 12, incorporating green building strategies such as high efficiency mechanical systems, on-site PV, indoor water wall, plays a role in what type of cost implications? Those things would likely increase first costs, but give you a better life cycle cost. Right, so we're spending a little more money up front, but we're saving that money over the lifetime of the structure. Right, so we might be spending additional money for a high efficiency mechanical system or photovoltaics, but that increased first cost is being paid back over reduced utility costs over the life cycle of the project. So over the life of the project, costs are reduced.
Dan, so the answers are B and what?
In this case, the answers are A and B, which seems a little bit increased life cycle cost. I think the question is a little poorly worded here. To me, I think what they're trying to get you to think about is in some cases you have to spend more money up front. I would think of it reduced costs over the life cycle, but my key says A and B, but that seems irrational. It should be reduced costs over the life of the project, not increased life cycle costs.
Okay.
Right, again, we are investing more to get a return over the life of the project. We're thinking long term. That's part of what we're trying to do here.
So you think the question, there's an error in the question?
I think there might be an error in the question, yes.
Thank you.
That is 512. Uh, 513, project plans on earning silver, right? Silver is 50 to 59, so it's probably good to remember, right? We're certified at silver, gold, and platinum. 40 to 49 is certified, 50 to 59 is silver, 60 to 69 is gold, and then The next step up is platinum, so it's good to remember those point values. Which of the following project types is applicable to the LEED for NC and major renovations rating system? I would say this case they're looking for government facility. Again, that doesn't make any sense to me. All those things could be applicable to BD and C. Question 15 has to do with the association factors. I think pretty sure that I put it in our slides from last week. The association factors are relative efficacy, duration, and control, right? Efficacy is how much impact you have, and duration is how long it lasts. So in this case, it would be B and C are the correct answers. And let's go to this has to do with kind of the essential concepts of LEED. Right, LEED Online is the system where you submit stuff. MPRs are minimum program requirements, and the steps in the certification process. Remember, one of the MPRs has to do with the size of the project. So for LEED O&M and LEED O&M, the minimum project size is 1,000 square feet. Again, in my experience, a building that small would be irrational to go after. Again, in my previous one of my previous jobs, I was responsible for managing a portfolio of projects that we were going after O&M certification for. And generally speaking, you know, the company that I worked for had a goal of certifying such percentage of their square footage. So we generally chose larger buildings that would have a larger percentage impact on our goal relative to the resources that we had to invest in certification. So yes, these minimum size requirements exist in the MPR, but realistically, you're just not going to go after a building that's small. Which rating system can be pre-certified? Remember, it would be D, core and shell. Core and shell is meant for developers. So in the case of developers, pre-certification is intended to be kind of a marketing advantage to the developers of that project, to say, to help them market their building, right? Because the developer wants to get tenants signed up for their building, you know, before they break ground. So in this case, pre-certification would help them market their building. Which of the following rating systems are not eligible to pursue a split certification review? In this case, it would be C, O&M, and E, neighborhood development. Remember, split certification is that you can have the ratings people look at the design and then the outcome. In the case of O&M, the building is already built, so there's not a design, and the same is true for ND, for neighborhood development. So that, remember, in BD and C and those other A, CI, and C and core and shell, that design review is optional. That's what they call a split certification if you're pursuing the optional design review. Minimum floor area requirements. Again, remember, and I'm pretty sure I had this on my slides from last week. Some of the things you just have to remember. Right? It's 1,000 square feet for BD&C and O&M, 250 square feet for ID&C, and neighborhood development is 2 buildings and has to be smaller than 1,500 acres. So in this case, 6.4 would be A and E. How many MPRs or minimum program requirements are there? The answer in this case would be B, 3 minimum program requirements. 6.6, which of the following statements are true? Right, appeals are mailed. No, that's not true. Everything is done online. Nothing is mailed anymore. That's a given. So it would be B and E. Right, appeals aren't free. Appeals are submitted through Lead Online E, and appeals can be submitted 25 business days after final review. So the correct answer there is B and E. 6.7. MPRs exist for all rating systems, so it's not A. It would be, sorry, and D is not true. Credit interpretations are not reviewed by the USGBC. They're reviewed by the GBCI. So in this case, it would be B, credit interpretations are reviewed by GBCI, and lead interpretations are reviewed by the USGBC. That is correct. Remember, credit interpretations are specific to one project and one credit. Lead interpretations are applied to the whole rating system, and that's probably one that I need to clarify as well, because I don't think I've covered that adequately. Design reviews can prove to be a beneficial option since the project can be awarded points before construction begins. Yes, the design review is beneficial, but no, project, it can't award points before construction begins. So in this case, the answer would be false. Right? We submit on the project after it has been completed. We can get a pre-certification or design review, a split certification in everything except O&M. 6.9, lead project registration provides which of the following? Access to, and this, sorry about that, my E is over here, it would be you don't get CIRs, you have to pay for those. You don't get a pre-application review. You have to, pre-application doesn't come from USGBC. You don't get points, but you do get access to Lead Online, to the credit templates, and you do establish contact with GBCI. So again, when you're submitting a project, you're typically going to be either filling out templates online or a combination of filling out templates and submitting documentation. A 6.10, an application for lead certification. would include A, project summary information, and C, all the completed credit templates. When should the construction credits and prerequisites be submitted for final certification review? Typically, it would be 612. That's another question there. 611 would be typically C after substantial completion. Regarding the application process for LEED certification, which of the following statement is a correct statement? I'm sorry, my C and D is running together. In this case, the correction, 612. In this case, I think they're looking for C. I'm going to have to look at that one again a little bit harder as well. Sorry about that. Uh, 613 is B. They have 25 business days. Sorry, my A, B, and C's are running together here. Which of the following correctly characterize CIRs? CIRs can be submitted anytime after a project is registered. That is true. Can be viewed only by the primary contact. That's not true. Typically, the whole team can view them. Can be requested online would be C. And most importantly would be F. They're relevant to one specific project. So again, a CIR is project specific. Let's see, 615. This is a long one here. Let me think about this. I think they're going to say A, we want to start early, right? We talked about starting the design process as early as possible. So A is a correct answer, like integrative design. D would be we want to delegate responsibility. Like typically the project team divides and conquers. So you have people with specific expertise. And E, again, is our collaborative process. So A, D, and E would be the correct answers there. And again, I will post these when we're done with class. Anyone have any questions?
No.
Okay, good. Again, I think your best bet is to...
No questions.
Pardon me?
Oh, there's no questions.
Okay, thanks, Zach. Okay, again, I'll post these answers and let's get into let's start with our main topic here. Okay, remember we're talking about the LEED LT or location and transportation credit category. I have a presentation here to give you some background materials to better understand some of the things that are tied up with some of the considerations that are tied up with location and transportation. So we're going to be looking at the notion of location efficiency. Right? We know what energy efficiency means, but places or locations can be efficient also. We're going to be talking a lot about compact neighborhoods, walkable streets, access to transit, proximity to jobs, mixed land uses. Talking about situations where we're basically talking about density as a desirable characteristic, right? So energy efficiency, you understand. In this case, we're going to be looking at compactness or density as a desirable attribute. Right? If you live in a dense, a compact, a location-efficient neighborhood, the goal here is that you spend less time driving around in your car, less money, produce less GHG, greenhouse gas emissions to meet your everyday travel needs. Right? Everything is closer at hand. Maybe some things you can walk to or bike to, as opposed to having to get into your car. That's the notion of a dense or locationally efficient neighborhood. So if you are so lucky to live in such a community where your access to your job and the stores that you need to get to, right, if all those things are close at hand, then that has the potential of providing savings to you both in time and money, because transportation costs, as it says here, are typically a household's second highest expense after housing. So again, compactness or density or location efficiency reduces greenhouse gas emissions, ideally because we have other modes of transportation available to the household besides the automobile. So what does that look like? I've taken a lot of this information from an organization called the Center for Neighborhood Technology that's located in Chicago. They have this thing called the H&T Index, but they had these interesting graphics on their website that kind of related to Chicago, the city of Chicago and the surrounding suburbs. And they kind of make clear graphically what is probably intuitively obvious if you took some time to think about it, right? So in this case, we're looking at annual driving costs, where green is lower cost and red is higher cost, and not surprisingly, the further out you move from the center city, from the city of Chicago, the higher your costs are for automobile transportation, right? If you're like Bryn, your auto costs are zero because you ride your bike everywhere. So, but not everyone has that option.
Yeah. Especially in Purgatory over there.
Yeah, again, you get further out again as you move.
Purgatory, basically.
Yes, as you move further out from the city center, again, not surprisingly, your annual driving costs become higher and higher because you get to a place where you almost can't do anything without getting in your car. And there's maybe no public transportation available. And on the flip side would be greenhouse gas emissions, right? They're going to be tied to automobile transportation. So again, greenhouse gas emissions are going to be lower on average the closer into the center city area you are, for a couple of reasons. Number one, your house is probably smaller, your dwelling unit is smaller, maybe, and two, you drive less. So we have a lot of things going on in the city. We might have a high greenhouse gas per unit of land area, but on a per capita basis or on a per person basis, per capita means per person, greenhouse gas emissions are lower in cities. So what are some of the things that, what are the factors that drive this lower GHG and lower automobile cost in a denser urban area in a city? Well, number one would be density. Number two is the availability of public transportation. Number three, mixed land uses. Number four is zoning. So let's look at all those things. And I put this book title here. This actually may have this book sitting on the shelf in Francis's office at Triton, but it's something I read a couple of years ago and I found pretty interesting. Right, this person was arguing that cities like places like New York City and Hong Kong, which you hardly think of as being efficient, actually have substantially lower greenhouse gas emissions per capita. Again, because you're driving less, you're living in smaller dwelling units, all the stores and everything you need are close by, right? So you can walk to the store and not have to get in your car. So again, how does density play into that? So more stores and services are available nearby and distances are shorter, making it possible to walk. You know, that is possible in an urban area and much less possible as you move further out from the city center. Density and public transportation are related to each other, right? You need a certain amount of density of people to make public transportation possible. And usage, right? If more people ride public transportation, then the transit company runs the bus or L more often. So those things all work together in a virtuous cycle. So I found some information here how dense, you know, how many people, how many houses need to exist to have enough density to support public transportation. So the data that I saw kind of boiled it down to 9 to 12 dwelling units per acre. So what does that look like? Well, this is me taking a picture of the houses across the street from me in Southeast Oak Park, where I live. Right, I live in an older community where typically we have bungalows on 25 by 125 foot lots. So in this case, we have about 14 dwelling units an acre. Right, I'm an engineer, so I'm always doing calculations on things. You know, when I see information, I don't believe it until I actually do the math myself. So in our little slice of Southeast Oak Park, because we are, you know, smallish houses on smallish lots, right? We have enough density where it makes sense for us to have, in this case, we have a blue line stop not too far away from us. This kind of density wouldn't and doesn't exist as you get further and further out into the suburbs, right? This density would be typical of the city of Chicago and probably the inner ring suburbs. What's another factor? We talked about mixed use. Mixed use means we have residential and commercial uses are adjacent to each other or in close proximity. The opposite of mixed use would be separation of uses. Separation of uses makes it more difficult to have that location efficiency. We'll see what it looks like. We'll see what that looks like here. Right, again, this is when I was doing these slides a couple of years ago, I walked around in my neighborhood, right? So this is mixed use. Again, this is not too far away from me in Southeast Oak Park, and you could find the same thing many, many places in the city of Chicago and the inner ring suburbs, right? We have residential and commercial uses adjacent to each other or in close proximity. So in this case, we have an apartment building with ground floor retail, right? That's mixed use. Right, here's another example. This is walking in the other direction on Harrison Street in South Oak Park. Right? We have houses and stores in close proximity to one another. Right, this is a pie shop on the corner. Right, so if you happen to live on the street and you want to buy a pie, right, you can walk down the street to the pie shop. Or I think there's a bar now in one of these other stores. Right, so if you want to go to the bar or buy a pie, you can get out of your house and walk around the corner and do that. That's more difficult if things are separated. Right? Here are separation of uses. Separation of uses would be residential, commercial uses are in geographically separate and distinct areas. So I believe this is the Jewel Osco that's on North Avenue, right? Just not too far from the Triton campus. So we have a grocery store set way back from the street, surrounded by a big parking lot on a busy street. Right, and this is actually as the crow flies. I drove around one day. This is actually the neighborhood that's kind of tucked behind that shopping center. But in this case, even though as the crow flies, these two things aren't that far away from each other, you have almost no incentive if you live in this house to walk to the Jewel Osco, and it's going to be very natural for you to get in your car and drive to the grocery store, even though the grocery store isn't that terribly far away as the crow flies. So again, that's what happens if we separate residential and commercial uses from each other. It makes it more likely that people are going to have to get in their car and drive someplace. Right? That's what we're trying to avoid if we want to have greener buildings and more sustainable development. Right? We're trying to avoid situations like this. So who decides what gets built where? Well, the rules are made through a process called zoning. Right? Zoning is typically done on the level of a municipality. Right? I think this I believe is Melrose Park. Right? So Melrose Park at one point would have decided how to zone this particular development. So zoning is a legislative process that divides privately owned areas into different zones: residential, commercial, industrial, but according to the usage that's permitted in that area. Then each zone is regulated as to the density, location, size, and type of buildings to be built there. Right? So zoning is kind of the underpinning. A little later in the semester, we'll talk about building codes. But zoning talks about what you can actually build on a certain parcel of land. Typically, jurisdiction, the term jurisdiction means a unit of government. So again, the village of Melrose Park would be a jurisdiction. In my case, the city or the village of Oak Park is a jurisdiction. So the village of Oak Park, the jurisdiction that I live in, typically assigns these abbreviations. You know, R for residential, C for commercial, I for industrial, and pairs them with a certain number, right? As we shall see, R4 would be an area that is zoned for residential. Excuse me, I have to get a drink of water here. Zoning will typically stipulate things such as allowable uses. So in a residential zone, houses can be built, but not stores. Zoning will also talk about how high the building can be, the building height, the floor area ratio. Floor area ratio is the ratio of the square footage of the building to the square footage of the lot. Setback, how far the building has to be set back from the property line. How big are minimum lot sizes? How small the lot can be. And in the case of commercial, whether parking is required and how many parking spaces are required. So zoning is typically used to, it says limit adjacent incompatible uses, right? So, and preserve desirable residential characteristics. So in this case, it's really meant so I don't have a factory next door to my house, or I don't have a store or something that's going to create it next to my house. But as we shall see, these zoning policies can also drive whether we can have a dense, locationally efficient community. Sorry, it's a little hard to read on a slide. Hopefully you're not looking at it on the phone, but if you go to the website for your community, for your jurisdiction, and you poke around under zoning, you will probably find something like this. Right? This is there'll be a map of your village or your city, and it will show you how various areas are zoned. So you can look up the zoning for the specific place that you. So again, you can see in my little corner of Oak Park, right? We have our fairly small residential lots, all sliced up and squashed in here, right, just south of where I live, just south of the Eisenhower. And typically with that zoning map, you'll have the regulations that go along with it in terms of minimum lot areas, lot widths, maximum building heights, building coverage, how much of the lot can the building cover, maximum impervious surface, right? All these characteristics of the built environment are designed or are laid out with zoning. So let's look at someplace that's a little further out. Right? Wheaton is a suburb, a little further west. I would almost call it a far western suburb, right? So you have to drive out I-88 to get to Wheaton. The things that you notice are all of a sudden now we have much larger minimum lot sizes. Wheaton is saying, I want these nice curvy streets and cul-de-sacs and large lot sizes, right? Minimum width 90 feet. Go ahead, Bryn.
I'm pointing out like the cemetery, like the land use, that cemetery over there.
Yes, I know you're you may know this particular area. I didn't, I know you're this is your area of expertise, so.
Yeah,
But
you got the prairie path over there. In the upper left is the prairie path.
yep. Yeah, well, you may be more familiar with this place than I am. I just picked it out because of I was trying to make a point about the minimum lot sizes, right? That the folks who laid out Wheaton are saying that you have to have a lot of 10,000 or 14,000 square foot. That's the smallest that the lot can be, right? So um, let me jump back a few slides and compare that to the lot sizes in the area that I live in, right? I said that my lot is what, 25 by 125, 3,000 square feet. So in this case, Wheaton is saying that lots have to be 3 or 4 times as large, and all of a sudden if the lot size gets larger, then we by design we can't have the density that would be required to support public transportation. So essentially, Wheaton has made it impossible to have public transportation, almost impossible to have public transportation because there isn't the density to support a bus line or a subway line.
Yeah, the very best you get would probably be like the feeder bus to the Metro, if anything.
Yes, that's correct. Again, I'd have to look and see what this street is right here.
That's Roosevelt at the north end.
Yes,
There's a bus that runs on the weekdays all the way to the blue line from there.
right. But the other thing is,
And it only goes farther.
it's not only the existence of a bus line, it's its frequency, right? Frequency matters in the case of public transportation, right? If this bus line, let's say that's North Avenue, right, or
It's Roosevelt 301 along there.
Roosevelt or St. Charles, right? Let's say that that's a feeder bus line, but that feeder bus only runs once an hour, right? It's unlikely that if you live here, you're going to go and try to catch that bus because you're trying to get to work and oops, you forgot your coffee and you had to run back inside your house and you come back and the bus is already gone. You have to wait another hour, right? You're unlikely to take that bus line. Whereas in the city of Chicago, right, you have much higher frequency on North Avenue in Chicago. That same North Avenue bus might be running every 5 or 10 minutes, and you're much more likely to take a bus or a mode of transportation that's running every 5 or 10 minutes than you are that's running once an hour. So again, the fact that we've made lot sizes larger, density is lower, makes it much more difficult to support public transportation as we get further out from the city center. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Before we jump into this next topic, why don't we, it's 8 o'clock already. My how time flies when you're having fun. Why don't we take a 10-minute break here? So it's 8 o'clock now. We will start here again and we will start at 10 minutes after the hour.